Women, have you ever had a run-in with an incel? If so, what happened? Story 1. I met a guy online who turned out to be an incel. We chatted casually for maybe a month. Nothing intimate, just friendship, as we had a hobby in common we were discussing. One day he asked me to check his dating profile for him, hoping that a woman's perspective would tell him why he wasn't getting any messages. I didn't mind, as he'd been polite up until this point, but I didn't read that this was his way of flirting with me. I just told him his bio was far too long. It was the longest profile on a dating website I'd ever seen. It would have been pages and pages of paragraphs if you printed it out. I just said it's easier to read if you shorten it and make it about the lasting impression you want a woman to have of you. And I sent him an example since I knew about his hobbies. I just wrote something like, I like philosophy, debating, and discussing psychology, and leave it at that instead of discussing every topic in detail and what you like and don't like about them. Also, his page was filled with more negatives than positives. Paragraphs upon paragraphs about what he found unattractive in women. His standards were ridiculously high. They couldn't have had any previous relationship, no tattoos, can't be into hobbies he doesn't like. He accused anyone who didn't like his hobbies of being stupid, and he thought other people were all vapid and shallow for only caring about looks. Also, he required a woman to have a very specific body and face type. When I told him maybe he should cut this part out and stick to what traits he likes in a woman, he suddenly flipped out of nowhere. He'd shown no sign of craziness before he asked me about his dating profile. Suddenly, he starts ranting about how women don't want him, but he's a catch. And if I wasn't such a witch, I wouldn't be single, and he could show me a good time if I learned to be more passive and not speak my mind as much. I told him to calm down, and he wouldn't. He sent me pages and pages and pages of hateful, venomous messages about hating women for not seeing how intelligent and insightful he was, and how I would be single forever if I didn't take his offer to date him because he could improve me by making me more alluring to other men. I tried to give him another chance, but my message was drowned out by the paragraphs he sent me over the course of a few hours. So I blocked him on Skype, and his original account that we spoke on another platform disappeared the very next day. Never heard of him since. My favorite part is just that he called women shallow for caring about looks, then immediately went on about what kind of looks he values in a woman. This is actually a pretty common incel trait. You're a terrible person if you can't see beyond their lumpy potato bodies, but you'd better be an absolute model. Luckily for most women, it's also pretty common for them to dig their own graves like this. I've seen other stories before where the guy might have still had a chance if he'd calmed down, but he refused. At that point, I'm not even sure how accurate it really is to call their celibacy involuntary. Story 2. I went on a date with one about 6 months ago. It was so uncomfortable. He was asking me what I was looking for in a relationship, and the conversation went something like this. M represents me, and D will represent him. D. So, do you know what you're looking for? M. I'm new to this state, so I think that, for now, I just want to go out a bit and meet new people. I'm the commitment type, though, and I'm not at all opposed to finding something serious. What about you? D. Well, I don't really think I want a girlfriend, you know? I don't want to feel smothered. I mean, being intimate is nice, of course, but I just like hooking up. I hooked up with some girls this summer, and boning them was fun. We just effed, no dating. M. Yeah, I'm not really the hookup type. I feel like healthy relationships are pretty balanced, and no one needs to feel smothered. But I can see how going out with no strings attached could be a good time. D. Yeah, I really just like boning, like any other dude, you know? I don't need a girlfriend. Of course, there are the times that I see a stupid couple holding hands and being all cute, and that makes me mad. Of course, I don't like seeing it flaunted like that. I kind of froze at that point. It's difficult to explain the tone of voice he used when he said that last thing, but it made me uneasy. I could see the anger/hatred in his eyes. And he went from casually conversing to seriously mad, and he kept saying, of course, like everyone felt the same way, or like he was trying to gauge if I felt similarly. Needless to say, I never went out with the guy again. I met my now boyfriend 2 days later, and we've run into D together while on campus. D and I go to college together. Every time, D glared at me and shoots my boyfriend dirty looks. I realized that he said he was banging girls, which would make him not an incel by definition, but he seemed to be lying about banging them, and the way that he spoke about his anger toward couples/women with boyfriends made it really clear that he had an incel-like mindset. Yeah, boning is cool, but have you ever been angry at couples holding hands? Story 3. Not an incel, but I was approached by a red pill pickup artist in Melbourne when I was visiting there in November last year. I'm sorry if this story comes across a bit r/that happened. It's not made up at all. This guy came up to me on the street one afternoon and asked me if I knew how to color coordinate my clothes. I was wearing red docks, blue jeans, and a green jumper. Not the best outfit, sure. I was living out of a backpack. We started talking, and I realized he was a pickup artist. And he was pretty good at it, too. Charismatic and skilled at negging, plus decent looking, in my opinion. It was almost a shame that he was repeating direct quotes from r/the red pill that I'd read the previous evening. Little side note, I was completely fascinated by the red pill for a long time. I know every single trick in the literal handbook. Some of it is really awesome advice, how to be confident and stand your ground. I gained respect at work and developed a better relationship with myself and others through some of their advice. Most of it, though, is misogynistic and unhealthy. If you can detach yourself from it successfully, it's well worth a browse. Back to the story. I kept talking to this guy and just demolished his whole plan of attack. I literally watched the spark and charm he had fade away as he wasn't met with the meekness he was expecting. The things he said to me, I deflected with the same tactics he had read to use himself. I led the conversation, turned it back onto him, got him talking. His whole frame, as they call it, fell apart. He started stumbling over words, getting caught on his attempts to neg me. I asked him at the end why he does it at all, and he said he wasn't sure, that he wanted to have a family and have kids one day. I told him I knew where he was getting the techniques from, and that, yep, they work, maybe on me too, if I didn't know them back to front. But they were taking him on a really hard path, and a path that often leads to/coincides with being an incel. He asked for my number again. I declined, and we shook hands, and he said, "This has been refreshing. Tom, I hope you read this. I hope you've escaped that world." If anyone doubts this story is true, it's likely just because of how strange it is to see a woman speak so highly of pickup artists, especially to compliment someone on how good they are at negging a person. Frankly, it's time we retired the phrase pickup artist altogether. There's really no artistry to most of what they teach you. And remember that one of their chief pieces of advice is to chat up as many women as possible. Talk to enough people, and you're more likely to eventually hit it off with one of them, regardless of your personality type. That's a far better way of building confidence than throwing shaded insults at women until you find one with low enough self-esteem to find that charming. Story 4. It happened more frequently in my younger years, say late teens/early 20s, almost exclusively online. I used to be one of those super nice but actually pushover-y girls and gave everyone the time of day to at least chat and small talk. Now I do not 100% because of incel run-ins. Worst run-in I've had was a boy, after agreeing to exchange phone numbers, I don't know why I did, would call/text sometimes as early as 7 a.m. I never answered and eventually got ticked off and told him to stop calling me. He was way too obsessive, and I barely knew the guy. He later threatened to post my social media pictures and phone number on Craigslist and Backpage on the casual hookup ads. No idea if he ever did, but for weeks, almost months, he would just text $signs and say nothing else. So, men, if you approach a lady and she seemed short and snotty with you, like she has her guard up, she's probably actually a really cool girl, but has had one or two really disturbing run-ins with an incel, so she's protecting herself from the trouble. We all watch too many episodes of Dateline to play around with that stuff. Incels seem to make life a little more crappy for everybody, even other men, sadly. I can't tell you if I ever ran into one in real life, but I know I have. I'm 100% sure I did, but it was completely non-memorable, and I can't say I even noticed them in passing. Maybe that's why they get so upset with people. It seems like a sad life, but they make it impossible to feel sorry for them. Poor. Story 5. I started chatting with him on Tinder. About an hour later, I run into a friend of mine, and we decide to grab a beer together. I told the guy, because I was still chatting with him, and he explodes. Goes on a huge rant about how if I have a straight male friend, I should just sleep with him then, since the only reason a straight single man would be friends with a girl is to sleep with her. Also that if we were dating, he'd never let me have male friends, because they'd just want to sleep with me. Noped out of that one pretty fast. The worst thing about Tinder for me, when I was single, was how many guys seemed to think matched meant you're my exclusive serious girlfriend now. Dudes won't even know your last name or phone number and get mad at you for speaking to other men. Like men you already knew and have met before, or not messaging back promptly or whatever. I never got a dong pic on Tinder, but dang, did I get a lot of crazy guys going, "You didn't respond to my message at 2 a.m. / in the middle of the workday within 30 seconds. You are a horrible witch horse smut who's sleeping with everyone in town but me." Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of this video and have a wonderful day. Story 6. There was a guy at my best friend's university whom we are about 90% sure is/was an incel. He was born with a genetic defect where half of his face is about 1 inch lower than the other half of his face, and because of this defect, he believed that the world owed him big time. He was a general butthole to everyone, male and female alike. He never showered, used deodorant, or brushed his teeth. My best friend had the misfortune of being in the same dorm as him for 1 year. She also had a couple of classes with him. His personality somehow was uglier than his appearance. He was always very negative towards everyone. This is just sad. I think the way we look on the outside can sometimes correspond with how we are on the inside. Sometimes good-looking people are really empathetic and sweet and thoughtful because they get treated well by others based on their appearance, which in turn encourages them to be positive to the rest of the world. Okay, let's back away on that last bit real quick. I'm not saying there's no logic to it, but here's the thing. How people look can also change based on your perceptions of them. You might know 2 supermodels with the exact same figure, yet opposite personalities. The one who's nice may look gorgeous to you, and the one who isn't will look like an emaciated wreck. It doesn't always happen that way, but it can. Besides, this guy might not have looked that bad if he bothered with good hygiene. Asymmetrical faces really aren't that uncommon. Ryan Gosling and Bradley Cooper both have them. It's one of the reasons so many people think they look alike. You've probably never noticed it because they play really charming characters, but you can see it when you look closely at their eye lines. The point is, don't go around drawing connections between looks and personality. The real problem is that this guy used his defect as an excuse to treat others terribly. Playing the victim is never the way to win friends. Story 7. Met one in college. He seemed normal at the time, although we rarely talked. Had literally 1 class together. He friend requested me on Facebook, and I accepted. Soon after, he asked me out on Facebook, and I rejected him. He started staring at me in the 1 class we had together and followed me around a lot. One day I got a text from my mom telling me I should check my Facebook. I maybe looked at it once a day at the time. He had commented on every single post I made, every picture, anything on my wall, literally everything he could. Every comment was different too, but all variations of how I'm a smut, how all I'm good for is to please a man and produce his offspring if he finds me worthy. He planned it out well, I think, because the semester ended the week before, which was good for me, I guess. Didn't have to see him anymore. I blocked him, then deleted my Facebook. I was rarely using it anyway. He put so much effort into those comments, hundreds of them. Just weird. There is a silver lining. He got you to give up Facebook. 1 down, only a few million more to go. Story 8. At some point, he decided he wanted to try to get a girlfriend, and figured out my timetable at uni and would follow me around between classes. I told him I wasn't interested. Then he did the same thing with my friend, and within a few weeks, he was trying it with basically all the girls from my year, from waiting them up after class to sending them a lot of messages through Facebook. We were all very aware of what he was trying to do, and it became a bit of a joke. I guess he thought if you just tried enough, it'll work eventually, which it might if it wasn't for the creepy stalking and awkward approach, and trying it with all the women at the same time. After that, he decided all women were bad for choosing jerks over a nice guy like him. But he must be dead by now, probably due to the insane amount of salt I always saw him put on his food during lunch. I'm talking about a small pile of salt he put on his apple each time before taking a bite, as if he wasn't salty enough already. Story 9. I'm not sure if the guy was an incel. This was over a decade ago now, I think. But at the very least, he was pretty convinced that women were the issue. The issue was that he was obese and unwashed, and looked exactly the way you think an incel would. We got along very well, and I tried to get past all that, but you can't force attraction. Basically, we hung out alone once, and it was pretty much a disaster. Awkward, uncomfortable, smelly. Anyway, after that, I tried to diplomatically let him down. He basically told me I was a smut, tried to rake my name through the mud, and cut me out of his life. So yeah, pretty much a paint by numbers. I don't understand why so many of these guys think they'll actually succeed at sullying the woman's name. If your whole personality is talking about how awful women are, then speaking ill of yet another woman is just going to sound like white noise. Let's put it this way. Would you ask a conspiracy theorist's advice on who to vote for? No, because you already know they hate every politician who's been vaccinated. If you tell me one story about a woman who led you on, I might believe you. If you tell me a million stories about how many terrible women you've met, I assume you're the problem. Story 10. I agreed to sleep with a friend of mine as a favor to him. He was worried that he would die a virgin. He was a good friend of mine, but I wasn't particularly attracted to him or anything. Sleeping with him was pretty boring overall. Anyway, he made fun of my hoo-ha afterwards, which did offend me. Actually, carried around that weight for a long time. He also told me he loved me a few days after that, which was not what we had agreed upon. But I do think that me sleeping with him really helped him come out of his shell and be able to talk to girls, etc. Story 11. Yeah, I thought he was a sweetheart. Talked to him for about 2 months. I was starting to like him, but I was too stressed to start anything up here yet. I wanted to wait a little while. After nicely rejecting him, but telling him that I do like him, he turned ape crap on me. A side of him I had never seen, or his true self, I don't know. But the crap that came out of his goddamn mouth, my god. It was the usual, you're a shallow witch, etc. It's weird that this OP actually told the guy she liked him, and he still called her shallow. That makes me think a lot of this incel nonsense has to stem from self-loathing. There's no rational reason to call someone shallow for making a decision based solely on their own lack of readiness to enter a relationship. It sounds like this guy already had doubts about himself, and he took the rejection as proof of those doubts. And you know what? That's pretty normal. It's as human as you can get, really. It's when you lash out at others for it that your behavior becomes problematic. If you don't want your story appearing on a thread like this, your best play is to simply not be a raging jerk. Story 12. He said sexism in the workplace wasn't real, then proceeded to give an example of a person being denied a role because of their gender. Women aren't discriminated against in the workforce. We had a lady put in her resume at our construction company, and the workers wanted to hire her, but the boss didn't end up hiring her because his wife would be jealous. Yeah, the cognitive dissonance hurt my head. Story 13. Rejected him twice, and resulted in months of stalking and harassment, which still has not ended. Hopefully it will soon. Had a couple of his friends ping me on Discord to tell me about his little misogynistic rants he'd go on about how women are only useful for their holes, the normal stuff. Also raided my Discord server 3 times. Story 14. Let's face it, as guys, we've had that one friend in the group who was an incel. Complainy, whiny, starts fights over a girl, can't get a girlfriend, dong blocker, and messer-upper of the party when girls are around. And the only reason he's tolerated is because he's the brother/cousin of your core group. We hate incels as much as the girls. That's the thing. Some guys also won't say anything because they don't want to be accused of virtue signaling or white knighting. But the truth is, it's both painful and embarrassing to have a friend who acts this way. It feels hopeless to try and talk him into behaving any differently, yet keeping him around often feels like it's injurious to your own relationships with women. Eventually, I think most guys really do hit the point where they just give up and cut contact with the guy. Because despite the bros first mentality, that guy is not your bro. He's not even a very good friend to himself. You can't let someone else's dedication to avoiding happiness allow you to sacrifice your own. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.